So let's taste some Alberta whiskey. These are all on the stronger side in terms of flavor, other than the 30-year-old, which I guess we'll crack into as well. Alberta does make lighter whiskeys as well. Alberta Springs, 10-year-olds. There's some corn in there. Alberta does make some corn as well, or corn whiskey, I should say. The standard Alberta Premium, I'll make a note. It's gotten quite a bit of feedback because Jim Murray really has been an advocate for it, really likes it. A few people like it. In general, my experience of talking to people is it doesn't do a lot for a lot of people. So just if that's kind of what you've thought is the pinnacle of Canadian whiskey, there's a lot more to discover. Alberta Premium, the standard stuff, doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's a very light whiskey, slightly spicy. You know, there's some light complexity to it, but against the field of Canadian whiskey, my opinion would be, it's in it's towards the lower end. So not a bad whiskey, but nothing special. These are special. So I'm going to start with Alberta Premium 30-year-old. So this is kind of a nice display of Alberta whiskeys. The other thing I'll note, actually, since I talked about Alberta Premium before I start, another one that's quite popular is Canadian Club 100% Rye. It's a Canadian Club brand, which is owned by Jim Beam. The Alberta Distillery is owned by Jim Beam. So they source some rye out of there. It's so fruity. It's still spicy and it's rich. It has this really, really bright, like candied orangey character. It's just a lot for me. So I actually don't like that whiskey as much, but I wanted to mention it because I know a lot of people really do. So it's one that it's cheap. It's like $25-$30. A lot of people hold it in high regard. So if you're exploring, it's worth trying. And you might be somebody who really likes that profile. I don't, but I think I can understand why that would be a preference, as opposed to a critical decision in terms of how good the whiskey is. When I've judged it in competitions, I've judged it for what it is, kind of the preference aside. But anyway, just as a quick note. But let's jump into this. I'm going to start with the Alberta Premium 30-year-old. This is a pretty epic whiskey. It was one released, towards the early, in the beginning part of the 2000s, or I guess the later part. So I think, maybe it would have been 2010s, but anyway, it was a number of years ago, around a decade ago. 100% rye, 30 years old. Bottled in the same bottle as Alberta Premium, with just a 30 kind of stamped on top. So didn't even look that different from your standard, and really created some shockwaves. People just love this whiskey, and you don't find 30-year-old rye sitting around. So if we smell it, so this is a much lighter whiskey than the rest, which is why we're starting with it. But on the nose, you get there's light oak coming out. You get these really nice leathery notes, dried fruit, raisins. Almond as well. It actually some of the dried fruit and the spice. Make it slightly reminiscent of an aged brandy. It doesn't taste like an aged brandy. It doesn't smell like an aged brandy, but it kind of has some of those character notes. If you taste it, it's a light whiskey. Starts out sweet. The fruitiness builds, and then about 2/3 of the way through, you get hit by this really, really nice spicy wave. Baking spice, ginger. Then you also get herbal notes like arugula hitting in, which is You get a lot of arugula in rye whiskies and from Alberta. And then the finish kind of slowly unfolds. Dried fruit, spicy, oaky, really complex, quite subtle. It was bottled at 40%, so a lot of complexity there. It's one it kind of hangs around. The finish is fantastic, still really nice in my mouth. One you have to taste, but it's not. I kind of put it in as well because I've had some friends taste it, and if you have some of the really big Alberta ryes, this one's quite soft. So this is more in terms of, body, like sort of a, lighter bodied rye, similar to like your standard Alberta Premium. So anyway, that's that fantastic whiskey, one of the landmark Canadian whiskeys, I would say. Yeah, the leathery notes, and there's almost a tiny bit of waxy character to it as well. Just awesome. But you don't need to watch me just sip and enjoy that. I do want to sample a bit more diversity. So the next one I want to taste is an all-time favorite of mine as well. Super unique. It's Masterson'S 10-year-old straight barley whiskey. So it's bottled at 46%. It is made from unmalted barley, matured in new oak, and as far as I'm aware, there's only one batch of it produced, so it's not. I haven't seen it anywhere at all recently, but really interesting because of what it is, which is why I wanted to taste it. So. I can tell from my reaction. Fascinating nose. Really, really earthy. It has these really intense, strong herbal notes. I get fresh broccoli. And it's kind of, you sometimes get some kind of fresh, unmalted barley herbal notes from Irish whiskey, but this is like another level. And you still have all the oak kind of coming in and supplementing everything that's going on. Yeah, I'm getting fennel seed, so interesting spice there as well. Yeah, toasted, a tiny bit of cocoa. Just you really have to taste it. I've had people who've had thousands of whiskeys over and poured this one, and it's surprised them all. So it really is, when I say it's unique, it really is a unique whiskey. I love it. Some people don't. I think some of the earthiness and herbal character to it is too much, but it's right up my alley. Yeah, so then on the palate, tons and tons of spice, tons and tons of oak. The herbal character just dominates, like broccoli, kind of, maybe some spinach, maybe drifting a bit into watercress, like a bit spicier. Not really, I guess, too radishy, but still a kind of a sharp herbal character to it. Chocolate, you still get the oak. The finish is just this really beautiful, sharp, spicy grain. The earthiness is awesome. It's one of the earthiest whiskeys that I've had that hasn't been peated. Really, really fascinating. The finish is huge, really, really long-lasting. Very, very pleasant, at least to me. But I do like earthy notes, so that makes it interesting. So anyway, all that to say, hard to find, but if you're ever able to find it or try it, I highly recommend that you do. It's a really unique, really beautiful whiskey. So Alberta uses unmalted barley as a flavoring whiskey. So yeah, most of what they do, as I said, is rye, but sometimes you get sneak peeks into what else goes on, and pretty cool. To be fair, I don't know how much the unmalted barley they use as a flavoring whiskey, so I've never been to the Alberta plant, and so some of the specifics I know more of, some of them less, but find out what you can. So we'll move on to one that's a little more accessible, at least within Canada, that represents some of the more flavorful Alberta rye, and that's the Alberta Premium Cask Strength Rye. The profile of this is not just a cask strength version of your Alberta Premium. It's actually, the balance of flavors is quite a bit different. Very, very fruity and bright on the nose. So not at all like the previous two. This has some of that really bright sort of candied citrus that I find in the Canadian Club 100% rye as well. And it's quite confectionery. Like there's parts of it that really do have kind of a candy character. Even take the fruit out, just have a candy character. But then you also get a nice backing of oak, and then lots and lots of spice. So rye tends to bring lots of spice. This has tons of it. It's very hot. I didn't add water. This is 66%. Really, really big. It's not as full-bodied as you might expect. So the next one we're going to have is a fuller-bodied cask strength rye. So it's sort of medium-bodied. So it feels very hot. Doesn't have the richness that some cask strength whiskeys have. That's not a bad thing. Just something to note. So it's just a barrage of fruit, tons and tons of fruit. You get the spice coming in as well, some woody spice like clove, cinnamon, and then there's a bit of oak there as well. You get just a tiny bit here. You get a tiny bit of that medicinal character that I find in Alberta, which I really like. And there's a little bit of earthiness too. That's quite nice. The finish is quite pleasant. It's sweet. It's fruity. It's fairly light for something that's has this much going on the nose and is 66%. But still nice. Actually got bubble gum on that nose. So an interesting whiskey. It's not. It's very bright in ways that are unique. It also does well with water. Usually I add a tiny bit of water to this one, but I don't mind it at full strength either. I'm really, really glad Alberta started to release these. They were releasing them every year, and hopefully that continues. So this was the second edition. There's a third edition that came out this year in 2021, which, or I guess last year now. We're in 2022. It came out last year in 2021 that was really good. They've been really, really consistent. Very slight variations between them, but so slight. Like even on a 100-point scale, I don't rate them differently. Very, very consistent. So now let's go on to something special. This is Hochstadter's 16 years old. So it's a 16-year-old 100% rye from Alberta. It's cask strength, and it is 61.9%. And this is another independent bottling of Alberta. So if you taste Masterson'S ryes that come from Alberta, Masterson'S ryes or Whistle Pig ryes that come from Alberta, they also source elsewhere, and they make a bit as well. This is it has a similar character to this, as well as Lock, Stock, and Barrel. So there's a few examples of this really intense, slightly medicinal rye, which I love. And this is one of the fine examples of it. So if we nose it, it's very different from what we've seen before. And actually the nose is a bit closed here as I nose it. Okay, I'm going to come back to the nose. So on the palate, it's awesome. It's like chewing arugula. Like it literally, like it really, really has such a spicy herbal arugula note to it. Really, really nice oak. I always talk about this medicinal character. It's very, very slight and subtle, but there's something in the background that's just slightly medicinal, which I really like. And then there's oak, there's fruit. The fruit isn't nearly as pronounced as in the previous one. It's kind of on the lighter end. You know, you're talking about a bit of dried apricot and dried cherry. Yeah, I'm entranced. It's really good. A bit of dried apple. And then the finish is spicy, it's long, it's oaky, cocoa. So really, really fantastic whiskey. If you can ever try a Masterson'S rye, get a Whistle Pig imported from Canada. Yeah, they're really, really nice whiskeys. Or a Lock, Stock and Barrel. They're a bit pricier, but they're really nice. Quite dark. Like all the kind of flavors and characteristics in this are dark. I said it'd come back to the nose. It's still a bit soft, so normally I would just leave this out. This is a live tasting. But what's starting to come out is a lot of what I tasted on the palate in terms of the really spicy vegetal character, and a lot of that oak. The finish is just awesome. It's about as much herbal character and spice as you can pack in. So we did a really quick live tasting of 4 of those whiskeys from Alberta Distillers. If you were to take time with them, you get tons and tons out of these whiskeys. They're all really fantastic.